Some people are not here yet. Gita and her daughter, do you think they're going to come? Should we wait? Or?
The daughter was not feeling well, and so the mom.
So is the mom?
So the mom. I don't see the... Yeah, the daughter is not feeling well.
Okay, all right.
Gita, I don't know. Gita, I saw her just a second. She'll come.
Okay, all right. Well, we can start, right? We don't
Yeah.
right, okay. All right. Let's start some breathing meditation, and then, of course, the motivation. And then, once again, visualize a manifestation of all the good qualities all of us can attain, appearing in the space in front of you. In the form of the Buddha, Buddha Shakyamuni, or as Holmes, the Dalai Lama, or someone else. Inspiring and showing us that we can become just like them. And we're also surrounded by all sentient beings. Just like us in wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer. In having Buddha nature, that is everything that is needed to reach the awakened state of an enlightened being. Yet still trapped in the ocean of samsara, the swamp of samsara. Controlled by karma and afflictions. generate that sense of closeness and care in the form of affectionate love. Thinking that all sentient beings are part of yourself. Just as important as you are yourself. As without their well-being, we can't be well and happy. And since their suffering is in the way to their happiness, let's generate compassion, an affectionate mind, wishing for every single sentient being to be free from any samsaric suffering and its causes. And also, let's think, may I personally be able to help sentient beings overcome the 3 types of suffering and their causes. And it's for that purpose, it's with that aim, generate the aspiration to actualize your fullest potential in the form of the awakened mind of a Buddha. Thinking, may I become fully enlightened for the benefit of every sentient being. So without letting go of that motivation, let's recite the prayer. On page 6. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the 2 accumulations created by practicing generosity, the other perfections, May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for a refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the two accumulations created by practicing generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the two accumulations created by practicing generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. So yesterday, the last meditation we did was, we went through these different stages. The end result was, of course, compassion. Compassion focusing on all sentient beings, wishing them to be free from suffering. And that needed to be preceded, of course, by generating a sense of closeness. Without closeness, without feeling close towards sentient beings, and due to that closeness also generating a sense of care or concern for sentient beings, we won't wish them to be free from suffering. And the techniques are usually twofold. I usually describe as twofold, either remembering they've all been or becoming aware they've all been our mother or someone else very close to us again and again, limitless times over and over. And so now wishing to finally repay that kindness through something in a very special way, a more lasting way. And then secondly, of course, based on our relationship with sentient beings now, their importance, their value, that they're just like us. And of course, looking only after ourselves is the entrance or the entryway to all suffering, whereas cherishing all sentient beings is the entryway to all happiness. So all these reasons indicate that it doesn't make sense to just look after ourselves, especially if we want to be happy. Okay. And then once we've generated that closeness, which is called affectionate love, based on these two methods, the next step is compassion. However, the problem is, right now we automatically want to be free from suffering, the suffering of suffering, and we don't need to train in that. Every living being automatically wants to be free from that. But the other two, the remaining two types, suffering of change, that is our ordinary happiness, and pervasive suffering, this mind and body. I mean, it pervades every experience. Without mind and body, we wouldn't have any experience. So that type of suffering, we're attached to. We don't want to let go. So why would we anyone else to be free from it unless we were free from it ourselves, or we wished for ourselves to be free from it? We saw the drawbacks, we saw the disadvantages in that, especially together with these types of sufferings, we have, of course, attachment towards them. We consider them precious. We do everything, our whole life basically revolves in at least achieving the second type of suffering. So why would we, for other sentient beings who now are hopefully close to us, as part of the previous meditation, we have a sense of closeness, even just in that moment. So it's the first step, to just have these moments, even if they're a little bit fake, never mind. And then based on that, so to understand that they're so limited, that they are in the nature of suffering, and actually for us to generate the wish for ourselves to be free from that. And that wish is usually called renunciation. The English word renunciation is used for the word focusing on myself. May I myself be free from all three types of suffering. Now, renunciation, the English word, can sometimes be misunderstood, especially in a Buddhist context. I don't know how it's defined in the English context, probably similar, but it doesn't mean give everything up, kind of like force yourself to shave your head, force yourself to put on clothes, right? It's not about forcing yourself, because it's not going to do it. It's about letting go. It's about letting go of that attachment, basically. I don't need this. It's so limited. Without pushing it away, we're still going to experience suffering of change, and that's fine. Enjoy it. Enjoy it for what it is, but not trying to hold on to it. That's the difference. As long as we're in samsara, and we still are, when we do these practices, we still very much have this kind of mind and body. I mean, samsara is not a place. Samsara refers to this mind and body. That is samsara. And the cycle of samsara is really just saying again and again we take on this kind of mind and body. Not the exactly same mind and body, of course, but a mind and body that is taken on under the control of karma and afflictions. Like we take on another body based on our attachment. Especially when we die, that attachment, it just triggers another karmic potential, and there we're back again. So cycle, do it all over again. So in that sense, we are right now in samsara. We have this mind and body, but it's our attachment that keeps us in there. Like I said, it's like a prison with the doors wide open, and we just stay inside that prison. We could leave any time, but we choose not to, because we're so attached to our ordinary happiness, but also to this mind and body. Now, once we realize, once we understand it's so limited, and by being attached to this body, by just wanting to have this body, we're sacrificing something that is so much more precious. We don't even make an attempt to fully actualize that potential we all have, experiencing incredible wisdom, very profound wisdom, incredible love and compassion, and together with that, and an unbelievable well-being. That is in the text sometimes called a bliss, for lack of a better word, because happiness seems to be not strong enough. So they call it the bliss, just a blissful, lasting state of full satisfaction. That's what our mind is capable of experiencing, but it doesn't because we are satisfied with so little, and we're not really satisfied, but we hold on to so little, and therefore close the door to anything further. So once we can, it comes from our heart. It's not forced upon us. Realizing, no, I want more. I want more. You know, it's like when you come from a small village. Yeah, it's like I was brought up in a small village. My entire family lives in a radius of, the closest family radius of 2 kilometers. A little further away, let's say 30 kilometers. Only have one aunt in Berlin. So, really pretty close. And everything was in that village. And one day I was like, I want more. I want more. The world is so big. What am I doing here? And so I left. It's a bit like that, right? To some point, we're just, that tiny little reality of ourselves, just focusing on I, me, and mine, and never moving beyond that these limited fences, that limited existence, not even considering the possibility of more. Until, of course, we do start to reflect, we do start to see the drawbacks, how we are so controlled. We have no freedom. Really, we have no freedom. As I said, every morning we wake up and the self-centered mind tells us what to do. We cannot even just stay all day long in bed, because sooner or later it gets bored, it gets hungry, it gets thirsty, it feels achy. We have to constantly be on the move. So therefore, once we understand that, at some point, just naturally, I don't want this. We can let it go. It's not forced, it comes natural. So I don't want this ordinary happiness. I want more. I deserve more. And I can reach more. And once we reach that type of mind, once we attain that mind, which is called renunciation, we then focus, we go back to all sentient beings. Now we have already developed that closeness, right? That closeness of like, wow, my brothers and sisters. Yeah, it's like the sense, there's some, Mingyur Rinpoche, I think you've heard of Mingyur Rinpoche, right? He wrote this book, and this is so beautiful, the title. I haven't read the book, I just love the title. In Love with the World. It's like he's in love with but I mean, not in that sleazy, I mean, not in that kind of romantic, in that kind of attached way. But like, the sense that through the practice, you just, everyone you see, it's like you're newly in love with them. It's just seeing them. You know, like when you're newly in love, you know, have like a crush on someone, it's before all the mess starts, right? So, oh, they're so wonderful, and you love them, and you want them to be happy. It's not even you want them to be around all the time. It's just thinking of them makes you happy. That's the kind of, you know, in love with the world we're talking about. Any living being, just their existence gives you pleasure. And because you have that, just, wow, everyone is so amazing. So seeing beyond the external. I mean, those are superficiality. It seems like, oh, some of those people in particular we label evil. Remember a few days ago? I hate this word because just that word suggests the person is full and, like, what's the word? Through and through evil. There's nothing good about them. This is an evil person. So just the word already suggests there's nothing good. But these are just superficiality. However terrible the damage is that comes from their actions. Of course, no doubt that is true. But these actions are not driven by something that is in the nature of their mind. They're all potential Buddhas. Except they haven't tapped into that yet. And those who feel in love with the world, they see beyond that. Their mind taps deeper. They go deeper into that person's incredible potential, that person's incredible mind, actually, that is there like muddy water. The water is still there. The mud is mixed with it temporarily, so the mud being the mental afflictions. However, fully aware that that can be separated, and that one day their image will be on some altar, not to be worshipped because they're so full of themselves and they want everyone to just bow to them and give them a lot of fruit and fake flour. No, I'm kidding. No, of course, visualizing beautiful flowers and fruits and, you know. No, it's about inspiring others, driven again by that love and compassion to reach that blissful state. Okay? So in that way, it makes sense, in love with the world. And now previously, this mind of renunciation, well, what you want for yourself, you want for others. Naturally. Just as parents, they feel so close to their children. So close that oftentimes they put their children before themselves. Like I said, the love of parents is the best worldly example. The worldly example. This is not from a spiritual point of view, but still, from the point of view of just worldly life, that's the closest to what we're looking for here. And that's a love that is not limited. So it's not like you have one child, 100% of your love is given to that child. 2 children, 50-50. 4 children, 25-25. 10 children, you know, it's spread so thin, 10%, 10%. Right? The love multiplies. With every child, you give 100%. This is the difference between love and anger. It's if I were angry with one of you now, really angry, and then someone else, another second person did something, whatever trigged the similar anger, I can't be angry with the same force. That's too exhausting. And then a third person and a fourth person, it's actually, I let go of the anger towards that person and now focus on the next. it's too exhausting, it's too tiring. And yeah, you let go of your anger towards one, you need to focus on another one. That's how anger works. To be angry with every single person. Of course, I could just kind of have that, I mentioned that before, that general sense, oh, I've got another one. I only need one. Do you need another one? Do we need one more? No? If anyone needs another one. Someone very kindly put a second one, but no, I've got a certain limit. Yeah. So, therefore, hatred hatred spreads thin. Yeah? Love increases. That's why we say increases limitlessly. In some of the texts, it talks about love can increase limitlessly. Now that shouldn't be misunderstood. It doesn't mean that your love gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. No. That's not what it means, that a Buddha's love grows stronger and stronger. It's not about that. But it's not limited towards a certain amount of sentient beings. Yeah, so saying all sentient beings, it's not limited, therefore. And whenever you meet a new being, for instance, right away that love is there, equally strong than for anyone else. So for like a Buddha, for instance, a Bodhisattva, they have this type of love that doesn't discriminate, and it just grows. It grows so strong that every living being is given 100% of that love. Does that make sense? So that's a huge difference between these positive qualities versus the negative ones that are so limited. I mean, if you're attached to, I don't know, I'm thinking like, you know, like in the past, some kings, they had like lots and lots of wives. Right? They had lots and lots of wives. I don't think they could have been equally attached to all of them. That's just too exhausting. You know, there's a favorite and so forth. But equally, yeah, it'll probably spread thin, that attachment. But love is not like that. Does that make sense? Anyway, as I said, you need renunciation to then also wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering. But actually, we don't stop there. We then, and well, maybe I'd say that I'll explain that now. So, well, first of all, there is a difference between just compassion and great compassion. Compassion and great compassion. In the text, they distinguish between these two. Now, in particular, in the Nalanda tradition, great compassion is considered very important. So everything we did so far was actually meant to take us to great compassion. What makes it great as opposed to just compassion? That's now the question. Well, sometimes people say it has to do with focusing on all sentient beings, but that can't be the reason. Why? Because I don't believe that is logically right. And I'll tell you why. Because the texts are very clear on saying someone who wishes to just be liberated. I don't know whether you're aware of this distinction. There are the two vehicles, the foundational vehicle and the sometimes called Hinayana, but that's not an appropriate term, especially not nowadays. So the foundational vehicle is the foundation of all other practices, and then you have the universal vehicle, also traditionally referred to as the Mahayana, but again, I think it's not good to use that word. So you have the foundational vehicle, sometimes also described as the Theravada tradition, but it's the foundation of everything else. So it's, you know, like the foundation of a building. Without that foundation, you can't build on that and follow the universal vehicle. So it's the foundation. But then the foundational vehicle is such that if you enter that vehicle, actually the motivation is only liberation. Only liberation. So the practices that you do in order to attain only liberation, you also need to do in order to follow the universal vehicle, where the goal, the aim is enlightenment. Okay, so there's this difference. There is liberation and enlightenment. But enlightenment can only be achieved if you become liberated first. But there's a difference between wishing to just be liberated versus wishing to be liberated in order to become enlightened. It's a bit like, if you want to go to Bombay, you have to go via Delhi. But there's a difference. You want to go to Bombay, you have to go through Delhi, but you won't stay there, you just continue on to get to Bombay. But if you only want to go to Delhi, you're not going to stay in the train to continue on to your journey, or nowadays train journeys are probably not, people fly more often, but anyway, you probably won't change planes to get on a different plane from Dharamshala, but rather stay in Delhi. Of course, eventually, even those who stay in Delhi will move on to Mumbai. I mean, the idea is that everyone who has become liberated, sooner or later, will also become enlightened. But it's a matter of what you wish for. Temporarily, you feel, no, enlightenment, that's too much for me right now. Or not even right now, maybe for the time being, that's not even an option, not seen as an option, so you just want to be liberated. Okay. And to become liberated, you follow the foundational vehicle. And for that, you must have incredible compassion. You must have compassion. Compassion focusing on all sentient beings. I think it doesn't make any sense when sometimes in some texts or some scholars seem to suggest those following the foundational vehicle, who've entered the foundational vehicle, that they have compassion, but only for many sentient beings, not for all sentient beings. Which ones do they exclude? If they have compassion for so many limitless sentient beings, sometimes they say limitless sentient beings, but not all sentient beings. What does that even mean? Limitless and not all? That seems weird. Or immeasurable sentient beings. Okay, so many that I can't count them. But again, which ones did they exclude? I don't think that's right. I think they have compassion for all sentient beings. And they may wish for them to be free from the 3 types of sufferings, because they want themselves to be free from samsaric suffering. And of course, there are causes. But actually, the causes of the 3 types of suffering are included in the 3 types of suffering. They're part of pervasive suffering. Which is why I believe, and this is not my own belief, there are a lot of people believe that. I mean, many of the scholars believe that, and it's from the text, from what I learned, that great compassion is not just wishing for all sentient beings to be free from the 3 types of sufferings. That's what practitioners of the foundational vehicle have as well. There is an extra aspect. There's an extra aspect of great compassion. Does anyone know? Wishing yourself. Wishing yourself to, taking responsibility, or wishing yourself to bring this about. Stepping in. So not just wishing for all sentient beings to be free from the 3 types of suffering, but contributing to that, helping sentient beings to bring this about. This is a wish. This is an aspiration. And then there's another mind that follows from that, actually. I haven't even mentioned that because we're mainly focused on compassion, but there is another mind that is the next step. We don't actually stop as part of the practices that are done, as part of the practices of the universal vehicle. We don't stop at great compassion. Great compassion is extremely important. It's one of the most important minds. But in order to now enter the universal vehicle, we need 2 more minds. 2 more minds. Okay? I'll explain it. It will be clear in a moment. What is the next mind? What is it called? The altruistic resolve. Sometimes it's called the special attitude, or but I like the altruistic resolve, which is what? It's just an enhancement of wishing myself to help all sentient beings to be free from the 3 types of suffering. Now you're determined, you resolve. So it's not just the wish, it's the determination. So instead of thinking, first I think, may they be free of suffering, and may I be able to help them. That's great compassion. Not just wishing for all sentient beings to be free from suffering, but wishing to contribute, to help them, to achieve that. Whether you in the end help all sentient beings is a different matter, but at least to have the potential to do so. So you're ready, you wish, if you could, help all sentient beings to overcome the 3 types of suffering. But then that turns into a resolve, a determination. Not only do I wish for that, I'm ready. I take personal responsibility in the sense that now I'm determined. I'm determined to do so. And that is called the altruistic resolve, or the altruistic attitude, or the special attitude. Different ways of translating it. There's the special attitude is the literal translation of the term from Tibetan to English. But I prefer altruistic resolve. It's a beautiful way. It really brings across the meaning. And that's the mind that follows from great compassion. And then, of course, driven by that love, by that type of altruism, you're now you're looking for a way to bring this about. Because right now, I can't even help myself. I can't even help myself to overcome the 3 types of suffering. I mean, I'm not of great benefit to myself, because I'm also trapped in the swamp of samsara, right? If you're trapped in a swamp, you can't pull anyone else out. You need to get out first. Or if you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks fall down, well, first you have to put on the mask yourself to be able to breathe, and then you can help others, to use a more modern day example. Therefore, you have to first get yourself out, but it's not just enough to free yourself from samsara. Because even though you overcome samsara, you still have some mental limitations. You still have some limitations in the form. So you have no longer any afflictions. Mental afflictions are all gone. If you have attained liberation, there are no longer any mental afflictions, including the root mental affliction, of course, that root or the fundamental misconception, that is gone. And therefore the other afflictions are gone as well, because they arise from that fundamental ignorance or root misconception. However, what we don't realize is that all these afflictions, whenever they arise in our mind, they leave some residue in our mind. Not in the form of the affliction itself, but in the form of tendencies. Tendencies is hard to explain what a tendency is. Of course, the tendency for these afflictions to arise again, but once the afflictions are gone, that tendency to arise again is gone. But there's still something left on the mind that obscures it. There's still something left on the mind. They usually give an analogy for that beautifully illustrates how the mind can still be obstructed, can still be prevented from, manifesting its fullest potential, because there's still something left on the mind, although the afflictions are gone. Does anyone know the analogy that is used for that? Yeah, the garlic. So let's say you have a wooden vessel with garlic inside. So the wooden vessel is our mind. The garlic are the afflictions, the mental afflictions. So the mental afflictions, they have been in our mind for a very long time, in that they pop up all the time, and as long as they're in our mind, they leave behind a smell. An odor is a smell. Now, if you were to remove the garlic from the vessel, you're still left with the smell. So to clean that vessel effectively, I'm not talking about stainless steel vessel, it's pretty easy, but wood, wood is much harder to clean. So in the same way, therefore, our mind is now, even after we've removed all the afflictions, even they're all gone, we have overcome them, we've realized emptiness, and in that way we've overcome, slowly have gradually been able to eliminate all the afflictions. We're still left with the smell. We're still left with these residues, which prevents our mind from knowing everything, from being omniscient. Right now it's like omniscient. What does that even mean? But the thing is, in the very beginning, a few times I've mentioned, what is the mind, what is the actual nature of the mind? It's to know things. That is what the mind does best. It knows things. But right now, what our mind really knows is very limited because of our mental obscurations, our afflictions, and the tendencies or imprints, as they're called, but tendencies they leave behind, they obscure our mind. So that we don't even know how we exist, how our own mind exists. Forget about that of others. However, if not only the obscurations that prevent us from being liberated, that is the mental afflictions, if not only they are removed, but also their tendencies, then there's nothing left on the mind or in the mind that is not in its nature. Then all the afflictions, the tendencies, whatever, all that is gone, and the mind does what mind knows best. It knows. It knows everything. Now, based on that love and compassion for all sentient beings, right? Because without that, you never become a Buddha. So now, as a Buddha, you still have that love and compassion. It's enhanced now with your mind totally freed from any obscuration. So you have this incredible love and compassion. You want to lead sentient beings to that same state. And now you can effectively. Why? Because you're omniscient. You know exactly how the other person thinks and what instructions they need, so that if they actually put them into action, your instructions, they attain enlightenment in the fastest possible way. Of course, you still need their effort and they still need to do it. Unfortunately, a Buddha cannot wash away the non-virtues of that person or the mental afflictions and transplant their own realizations. That's unfortunately not possible, but they can show us exactly how to get there. Having understood that, now we haven't even entered the universal vehicle, because we can only do so if we want to become a Buddha, right? Which means we can, and in order, just wishing to be a Buddha is not enough. It has to be for the benefit of others, right? Just the wish to become a Buddha, but for your own benefit, is never going to take you there. Because you need to accumulate an incredibly powerful positive potential. For your own benefit, it's positive, yes, not out of attachment and not out of an extreme or a mental affliction, but just if you were to say, I want to be enlightened for my own benefit in a very realistic way. It's just the force of one being. But if you do it for the benefit of all sentient beings, the positive potential of that gives it an incredible power. That therefore, before the wish to become a Buddha, before you can even generate that type of what's called bodhicitta, you need to develop this incredible love and compassion for sentient beings. And that's exactly via the two techniques, past and present, focusing on the past and the present, then affectionate love, feeling of closeness, care, and finding sentient beings endearing. Then great compassion, wishing for all sentient beings to be free from all suffering and its causes, and wishing to contribute or wishing to help sentient beings to attain that. then the resolve, I will do that, and then thinking, what is the best way? Oh, enlightenment. All right, I want to be enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. But why do we stress compassion here more than bodhicitta? Why is that oftentimes stressed more? Why is it considered more important? I mean, a lot of texts suggest that. They pay homage to compassion instead of bodhicitta, for instance. Why is that?
It's the seed, right?
Well, it's a bit like if you wish to drink water and you wish for a glass. So you're thirsty. Let's take the example of you're thirsty. You wish to drink something, you're thirsty. So wishing for water and wishing for a glass, which one is more important here? Which is your main wish? It's the water. The glass is just a means to an end. So think of great compassion versus bodhicitta. Which one is like wishing for the water? Which one is like wishing for the glass?
Bodhicitta the glass.
Pardon?
Bodhicitta the glass.
Bodhicitta, wishing to become a Buddha is just a means to an end to accomplish the benefit of all sentient beings. It's just a means to an end. So it seems like, oh, the focus is on just wanting to become enlightened. Well, if we wanted to become enlightened for our own benefit, okay, then that could be like the water. But that's just a means to an end. It's really the benefit of all sentient beings. That's why we're doing it. And if the benefit of all sentient beings were to be accomplished to become a plumber, we would wish to become a plumber for the benefit of all sentient beings. I mean, I'm just saying something like absurd, like a plumber, but you get the point, right? It's just that Buddhahood happens to be the most effective state to accomplish the benefit of sentient beings, and that's why you want to reach that state. Therefore, it's important to understand what bodhicitta really means. Two things. You have to have incredible love and compassion, and you want to attain, and based on that, you now want to become a Buddha. Then you're a bodhisattva, when you have that mind. But it's often misunderstood. So there are two ways, I think, in which it can be misunderstood. One way is that I remember talking to a friend of mine who had studied the Dharma to some degree. Very well-learned person. She's actually a professor at Emory, so she's really well-learned. And she knows about the Dharma to a large extent. But one day she said to me, I'm a bodhisattva. She actually said, you know, I mean, it wasn't out of, you could tell it wasn't out of arrogance or anything. She just said, I'm a bodhisattva. And so she, you know, pointed at other people and this person and so forth. And I said, oh, you are? And I asked, why? And she said, because I want to become enlightened. That's not a bodhisattva. You must first have, and I don't know, maybe she had that incredible love and compassion, I can't tell. But from the way that she explained to me why she was a bodhisattva, it didn't mention all sentient beings at all. So just wanting to become a Buddha doesn't mean you're a bodhisattva. So that's one thing. Very important, great compassion, that incredible care and concern for all sentient beings, together with the resolve to now do something, now to, you know, ready to do whatever is necessary. Then there's another way in which people misuse or misunderstand the word bodhisattva. There are people who are so kind and so compassionate, right? They're so incredibly kind. Maybe they even have great compassion. And then people say they're a bodhisattva. But they need to want to become a Buddha. Say if you don't have that aspiration to become a Buddha in order, you're just not by definition. That doesn't mean you're not equally or incredibly or maybe even more compassionate than a bodhisattva in the beginning of their practice. You could have even stronger compassion, even stronger great compassion. But the aspiration to become a Buddha, that makes you a bodhisattva based on great compassion. So you need to have both. Even in Tibetan society, sometimes people say, oh, she's such a bodhisattva, he's such a bodhisattva. That is not to be taken literally. Literally, you can't take it literally. So in the sense that it depends on what they wish for. What is their aim? So sometimes people say, Jesus was such a bodhisattva, or Mother Teresa, or anyone else. Well, only if they really wanted, like they could have had that incredible compassion and have all that, which is so valuable. But did they want to become a Buddha or not? Or did they want to be with God in heaven? There's no judgment here. It's just saying, by definition, it doesn't make them a bodhisattva. Of course, we don't know. They could have been actually aiming for that, but for the time being, teaching something else that is beneficial to people, but their own practice is different. Now, that sounds like I'm saying Buddhahood is the only real religion, but no. If you want to be born in heaven, then, many of the other religious, even main worldly religions, they bring you there, right? They take you there to be born in a celestial state, surely. But Buddhahood is something very specific, or liberation is something very specific. If you want to go there, then there's the path here. It's a bit like you want to go to Mumbai, you take this train. You want to go to, I don't know, Pathankot? No, there's no train from here. Bodhgaya? You take another train, yeah. You go from Delhi, you want to go to Mumbai, you take one train, and then if you want to go to Bodhgaya, take a different one, or you fly, it's the same thing. Does that make sense? It's just a different goal. Oh, Tyler, yeah, go ahead.
So, let's say you had a group of people in a society that basically taught all the things that the Dharma teaches, but they didn't even know the word Buddhism. Or maybe the word Buddha in the way that the Buddhists describe it, but it was life is suffering, you want to get rid of these afflictions, loving kindness and compassion for all. Could those individuals, and let's say it was like mostly synonymous with the Dharma, still reach enlightenment even though there's no concept of like the same, let's say, precise principles? But I guess that would be
your question. Yeah, I understand. Well, it's not necessary that there's a mainstream that doesn't determine that. I mean, for instance, they say when the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni are gone, they will eventually go out of existence, and a new Buddha will come one day. But they say this Buddha will not teach Tantra, the Tantric practices. But they are really, really effective. Once you have the foundation in the Sutric teachings, then they're highly effective. So if he doesn't teach Tantra, does that mean there won't be any Tantra? Yes, of course there will be Tantra. But it won't be taught as like a mainstream kind of teaching that is available to everyone. In this, like now it's available to everyone. There are plenty of books, there are plenty of teachings available. The Tantric path will still be practiced by some, but it will be more a personal thing that is not made public. It's more like a private thing. So just because it's not part of the mainstream, people will still find out about it. Even, I mean, especially in Tantra, this goes so beyond oftentimes the ordinary. Like highly advanced tantric practitioners, they have visions. There are teachings that are called the visions of the 5th Dalai Lama, for instance. Yeah, so it's not even that, some of the tantric practices, it's hard to believe this. This sounds like so much like a fairy tale, but being omniscient, that's pretty much fairy tale stuff as well. So within the scope of omniscience, you can imagine there's a lot more possible even before reaching that. So we have just very confused dreams, for instance. Our dreams are all over the place. They're just ways to digest what happens throughout our daily life, right? But when you have a highly advanced being who's entered the path, the universal path, the universal vehicle path, is now no longer driven by self-centeredness, but by their incredible love and compassion for all sentient beings. They start to purify their mind. You don't just become from an ordinary person with a totally obstructed mind and suddenly you become a Buddha. You slowly remove these obscurations, step by step, step by step. It's a gradual process. So that means your dreams transform. You actually use your dreams to practice. You use your dreams, it's called dream yoga. So especially in the tantric, with the tantric methods, they're all just different methods, very effective methods. So you use your dreams, you use everything for your practice, including your dreams. And you could have visions and receive teachings there. So even though in that particular place there is no mainstream tantric path that is available everywhere, or, well, not everywhere, but to a certain extent people know about it, still, if your mind is ready, you receive the teachings in different ways, through visions or through meeting just this person, right? No one else ever meets, but you meet them, however they suddenly pop up, and they give you teachings. Yeah. So it's not absolutely necessary in answer to your question. So now I gave you the example of Tantra, but even without going that far, let's say a country somewhere, yeah, the tantric teachings are available here in this country and in Tibet, but I'm sure there are other countries where it's not really available. People don't really know about it. And still, if there was that kind of path, the way you describe it, when people's minds are ready, someone will teach them. Does that make sense? Yeah. So again, we think of an objective world, but going back to this idea, it's a subjective world, then things are quite different, right? I mean, it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating how this becomes sometimes clear, especially when you have a highly realized being like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. When His Holiness gives a teaching, sometimes, I mean, usually it's a wide variety of participants. There are newcomers who have maybe never heard about the Dharma, and there are incredible scholars, incredibly advanced scholars. And everyone gets something out of it. So sometimes the scholars, they're so surprised that His Holiness gives a teaching, and they look around, and even those people who have no clue seem to be understanding. And they voice that. They say, how can they understand this? This is so difficult. But the way His Holiness teaches, they get something out of it. That may not be the deepest level, but it fully satisfies them. And sometimes people hear different things. They communicate afterwards, and they said, oh, His Holiness said such and such. And the person says, oh no, I didn't hear that. I heard such and such. So everyone gets what they need. And again, if it was an objective teaching over there, it had nothing to do with my mind, in other words, we would all perceive the same thing, and we should, it should all be the same for us. But of course, that's not true. It's totally subjective. That doesn't mean there are not teachings that are not my mind. We're not saying these teachings are my mind. But what I'm understanding is only that I'm capable to understand, that my mind has the potential to know. And that's it. Nothing beyond that. So it's based on the external teachings, but eventually, the actual teachings, the teachings in my case, are just that. And that's what's most beneficial for me. And if now I were in that country that you just described, then 100,000 people listening to a teacher, one person hears exactly what they need, and that is work towards enlightenment, whether you call it Buddhahood or whatever you call it. The name is not important. But they receive exactly these teachings, and if they're ready to practice, they will practice accordingly. And the rest, as of the mainstream, therefore, well known, they won't. So it's not obvious to us. So there's a lot that happens on a level we're not even aware of. I mean, like just the fact that there are so many other living beings around us, even right now, that we can't see. Right? This is very interesting. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I mean, in Ladakh, for instance, and in Zanskar, they very much believe in the local spirit beings, the local celestial beings, whatever you want to call it. They call them Yulha. So Yulha means, Yul means local or place, and Ha means kind of celestial being, but can also mean a form of spirit. So there's all these different beings around. And we just don't believe in their existence. We can't see them, we don't believe it. Science hasn't, so because science hasn't proven their existence, we believe they have proven their non-existence. There's a difference between not proving the existence of something and proving the non-existence of something. Very different, right? But we believe, oh, scientists just never talk about it. Scientists would say that's all bullshit. Sorry for my French. So scientists would not believe that, and we just don't believe in it. Why do we not believe in it? Because we can't see it. And if 200 years ago, a scientist would say, would teach, would give a speech on what scientists know now, we would think they're crazy. Microwaves, radio waves, nuclear waves, whatever, right? We can't see them, they're crazy. Yeah? They wouldn't believe it. Like, think in the 17th century, they would probably put them in prison for spreading lies. It's a bit like that. Nowadays, we don't believe in the existence of other beings at all. But I remember a teaching His Holiness gave in Ladakh, where these beings are very much connected because of the locals. They make that connection. They're very much connected with the locals. They totally believe in their existence. And I remember a teaching where His Holiness looked in the sky, and I was translating. I was in Dharamshala. They have found technical ways to do that. His Holiness was in Ladakh. Many of us were in Dharamshala or everywhere. And I was sitting in my room, and His Holiness looks in the sky and he says, oh, there's so many local spirits here, or local deities. And I'm like, did I just hear right? He was looking up, right? And kind of, I guess they were floating. And I was like, did I hear that right? How can you repeat that? I mean, of course, I couldn't communicate with His Holiness. But he did say again. And so I knew how to translate. And I was like, I get it. So His Holiness even said that in public. He wouldn't say that in California or, or to a large Western audience. Oh, look at all the spirit beings. But in a place where people believed it, and many of them are practitioners and they have faith in His Holiness. Now I can tell you something really spooky. You want to hear something that is really unbelievable. There was a long life ceremony for His Holiness recently. And the preparations for that, they were incredible. And I was teaching a course at Toshita. And it was a very difficult subject, but still we could make it. I had 7 hours of class every day. And then we still had to fit in everything else. But this group was like, couldn't get enough. So, okay, we made it all work. So they could go to the Long Life Puja. I had to translate it. They went there. And then we had classes afterwards. So we got together and exchanged a little. We talked about what they witnessed. And you've heard of oracles, right? Now the word oracle, the Greek oracle, it's not really the same. It's not really the same. We use that word. But there are beings, for instance, a being called Nechung. This is a being we can't perceive. It's a being we cannot perceive, we cannot communicate with ordinarily. They're beyond, they have different bodies, so we just can't see them. And they've been around for a long time. They have a longer lifespan than we do. So they go back 1,000 or something years ago. And they're very strongly connected to Tibet. They have like a protecting function. I don't know that much about this being. You can easily read it, Nechung. Pardon? What's it called? Nechung. 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 That's how it's usually spelled in English, so you find information on that online as well. But they can communicate via a medium. There's a person that serves as a medium. And this is so fascinating. During that particular long life ceremony, this medium, this being entered the medium. And the thing is this, once this being is very powerful, it becomes very strong. The medium is not that strong. It's an ordinary, well, he's not an ordinary monk. He's really a special monk. But he doesn't have ordinary strength. But you could see it when you were there. This monk suddenly started changing. They control this being. They learn to control it. There are certain rituals like invocations, and then it enters him. And suddenly, he starts moving very fast. And what they have to do is now, they have to put a 20 kilo or 20 pound head, kind of like, it looks like a head, but it's made of metal, on his head to ground him. And if they do it too early, they kill the medium, because they have to tie it very strong under him, so they would actually suffocate him. But the strength of this medium, his neck grows bigger. It's kind of like everything is bigger, like the whole, like he's blown up, everything becomes bigger, and he starts with this incredible force. If you had that head, I forget the weight, maybe it's 50 pounds or something, you couldn't move easily with that. Plus it would suffocate you. It is tied so tightly underneath your chin that it would cut your air supply.
Is this a physical thing?
It's a physical thing. Yeah, they put it on.
The people around him put it on?
Yes, they have attendants, the attendants do it. So you have like 5, 6 monks, put this thing on, tie it, but in exactly the right moment. So they have to tie it on in the right moment. The oracle must have entered them, and when it leaves, very quickly undo it, because he dies. He's going to suffocate. So it's as dangerous as that. And then he starts moving around. He starts moving around. He breathes really fast. And he has so much faith in His Holiness. So he walks towards His Holiness, and he talks in this ancient language that His Holiness understands, and only a few people understand. And he talks to His Holiness, gives an offering. But during that puja, because there's not just Nechung, there are others. There's Yudruma, and I forget all the other names. There's so many of them. And they all entered. And there were little school kids that were entered. So the students told me, suddenly these children went into some kind of trance. And the other kids had to hold them, but you needed more than one child. And they were going into this trance, and they didn't know, the children had no memory, there was to help them. So spirits entered them, if they had the right kind of body. And the students later on, because I was translating, I was somewhere else. We do the translation in a translation building, or that was specially built for that, because it was too noisy on the ground. So I only saw the camera going around. We see actually quite a lot on our screen, because we have to translate, mainly His Holiness. So I saw a few of the oracles, but I never saw the children. So these TCV girls and boys, and Tibetans know that, they say, like, just be with them, stay with them. So they massage them, all these other kids massaged them and took care of them. But the students there, they came from other countries, some were Indians, some came from other countries. They were like, that was so bizarre what I saw. They had never seen anything like that. So it's the power of that place. Suddenly all these beings entered the humans, but especially the oracles, right? They transformed. There is a woman called Kandula. She's very famous. She's in the dining hall. Her picture is on the wall of the dining hall. Beautiful, very special woman that some people say she's a High Lama. She went into trance. She's also a medium. You couldn't recognize her. She looks totally different. It's very hard to recognize her. She takes on that wrathful face. It's so transformed. So anyway, so they went on, and they all went to His Holiness. They have so much faith in His Holiness, and they were like, you could see their devotion towards Him, and they would walk towards Him, and He make offerings, and they move on. And one woman, she told me there was an Israeli man who had never seen anything like that. He just happened to be there, and the oracle, just the trance was over, and he has no memory. He's unconscious in that moment. And he becomes stiff like a plank. So they carried out this stiff monk. I saw that. The camera showed it quickly. I cannot be that stiff. I mean, you must have incredible muscles, but it's not about that. The whole body is cramped. And so the Israeli man turned around and said, is he okay? They were like carrying out these unconscious people. So, is he okay? Just stood there, couldn't believe what was going on. He had never seen anything like that. But if you know what's going on, you know these are all these beings entering, sometimes involuntarily, entering young children. And they're all part of the Buddhist tradition. But so you have Muslim and you have Christian and you have all the different other, you have all the other kind of spirits. And we shouldn't be too obsessed about it. We don't know. Sometimes we misunderstand, and it's a different world altogether. But this was, if you had been there, what the people reported back, they said, I've never seen anything like that. That wasn't fake, right? That wasn't fake. So you have to see it to believe it. It's one of those things you have to see it to believe it. And that's not the main part of Buddhism. It's just a side kind of aspect. And His Holiness has compassion. This Nechung is just one of his disciples as everyone else. And they're like, they sometimes make predictions and say things. They do have certain abilities, or this Nechung has certain abilities. And His Holiness sometimes follows his advice and sometimes he doesn't, right? So out of this care and compassion he has for this being, as for everyone else, he treats everyone equally. This was really amazing. Maybe there's still a recording around of that long life puja.
It was the one right before His Holiness's 90th.
Yes,
birthday. It was
exactly.
An amazing one. They were four. We've never seen four. And one particular woman.
Yeah.
There was one.
Yeah.
Right at the end.
Yes.
Hotel?
Pardon?
Kandula?
Kandula was there. She was in the middle sometimes. Kandula walked up towards His Holiness. I recognized her.
I didn't recognize her.
And then there were others, they were shouting. I mean, I didn't see that, but they told me they were calling around. And when Kandula first came from Tibet, she couldn't control it. And I remember, I wasn't in Dharamshala at the time, but my classmates told me that who's Kandula now, when she was possessed, she wanted to get to His Holiness, and the bodyguards tried to stop her. She's a small lady. She's small and of a small stature, but when she was in trance, they needed 4 or 5 bodyguards to hold her. She had so much power, she just threw them away. And then again, they didn't know who she was, so the bodyguards can't just let anyone. And then His Holiness said, leave her. His Holiness recognized who she was, and he said, leave her. And then she was allowed. She was singing and doing her thing. She couldn't control it. The being, every time His Holiness was there, it came into, and she sang praises to His Holiness and walking up to her, and it was really walking up to His Holiness. So eventually they let her be. And then His Holiness took her under his wings and showed her how to control it, how to control this being. So it only comes when it's wanted. But I remember they told me, the bodyguards, I mean, those are huge guys. They're ex-army men. They're trained. They go to the gym every day. 1, 2 could not. This being was too strong. So explain it to me, please. But like ordinary, good old science, how a woman who's, I don't know how big she is, but
Less than 5 or 5?
yeah, very, very small, very thin. Right? At that time, she was very young as well. She was in her early 20s. And how she can suddenly fight off 2 bodyguards with no difficulty. Right? Did she secretly go to the gym and she had all these muscles? No, of course not. Right? Yes, Ronnie.
There's also a side stream in Judaism of people that also have these kind of ceremonies. It's a bit different, and the goal is different. It's like they believe that there are some people that have kind of creature inside their body for nibuk. And I saw these kinds of ceremonies when they try to get it out, and then you see this person just getting into this trance that you're describing. It was a bit horrific to see. It was a bit scary, but it's like the same kind of like trance that someone is going, and then it's like loses his consciousness, and then when he wakes up,
No memory.
remember.
I think you're talking about an exorcism. That sounds like an exorcism to me. You see, the thing is this, yes, it actually exists that other beings can enter us. And I'm talking about beings that are beneficial, but they're also harmful beings. So people can become possessed. And this is also many years ago. I lived, not where I live right now, in the Nunnery. I lived initially while I was still studying near the IBD. And I witnessed something that was very unusual. I lived in the place, now it's called Loma Restaurant. But before it was Loma Restaurant, it was called it's all next to near the temple. You already enter the temple compound, yeah. There used to be a museum. And before the museum, there was a guest house. So that's when I lived there, with a balcony facing outside, and from my window I could see the balcony. And one day a lady arrived. I'm sorry to give you all these stories, but sometimes these stories are helpful to get a sense there's more than what we can see. But talking about a negative kind of spirit, I have to laugh a little bit because it was kind of a little funny, though it's really not funny, to be honest. But as I was living there and I could see out of my window, a mother arrived with her daughter. They arrived from Sikkim. In Sikkim, many of the people from Sikkim, they actually come from Tibet, or they're at least ethnically Tibetan, and therefore usually Buddhist. There are also some Muslims in Tibet, but they're a minority. Only very few Muslims in Tibet. So they were Buddhist. And this lady was so humble and so, yeah, she was very, very humble, very sweet lady, the mother. And she was with her daughter, and her daughter was very unusual. She'd be like shouting the whole time, and she used the worst Tibetan words. I learned a lot of swear words when she was there. I never heard these words, very kind of dirty language, especially when a monk passed by. She'd be like shouting, like saying dirty things to them. Right? She was out, and then her mother tried to pull her back. And I was like, who's this girl? What's going on? What's going on? And then someone told me she was possessed. One day, suddenly she changed. They didn't know what was happening. But a lama said something entered her and she had no control. She could no longer go to school. So her mother traveled with her to Dharamshala to see His Holiness. Because they were told, see His Holiness can separate that being and perform what we sometimes call exorcism, but like really just do something to remove that being. And, oh my God, it went on for weeks because His Holiness wasn't there. They were waiting for His Holiness to return from abroad. And they were so different, her mother and her daughter, and the mother was so embarrassed. She took her to the Tibetan doctor, but they looked alike, but the daughter was really like, wow, I've never seen anything like that, especially when a monk came by or something. She made fun of them, and they all knew they laughed about it. But she said a lot of dirty things, and it was funny in some ways. Sometimes she was funny, and sometimes she was just good old dirty. But the thing is, His Holiness came back, and right away they had an audience. And I swear, the next day I saw the girl, totally different. She was just like her mom. She had no memory. She was very shy. She didn't look up. You know, it was not pretending. She was just an ordinary young schoolgirl. She couldn't have been more than 16, 17. None of that. And they still stayed a day or two. I guess they were waiting for their they had to get a ticket back to Sikkim, get the bus. And you could still see them. It was, either she was an incredible Bollywood, Hollywood actress, I don't know, whatever, or something was really, but I don't know, why would she do that anyway? Why would she act like that? What's the point? It was entertaining, but it was terrible for the mother, very embarrassing, and terrible for the girl as well. But it was like a different person. She looked different. And I saw it every day because I could see from my window. They would walk past. She was out on the balcony, and everyone was listening and laughing. Not in a nasty way, but it was very entertaining. So how do you explain that? How do you explain that? There's some weird things.
So the good spirits enters the human body, right?
Yes, good ones.
Happens very much in my place where I live.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, so even there, so when the good spirits enter into the body,
Yes.
even they are not related to each other. The other person in the group, the spirit comes and gives instruction to the sufferings how to get out of it.
Ah.
They are not related.
Okay.
The thing is, even I can't explain how these things happen, but there is a negative aspect towards. A lot of people in my place, they totally believe into these things.
Yes.
They take advantage of this belief. There are the other people,
Yeah.
then they try to extract money out of them.
Yeah.
I have my uncle who reads this palm reading.
Palm reading.
The scriptures around that, they read and tell fortune about that person. He makes like huge money.
Yeah.
He himself tells that this is like all fake, but he goes to, he has people around the world. He makes all online marketing. He makes like huge money out of it.
Yes, very interesting what you're saying. That, okay, in your village, for those further in the back, or also for the recording, I may just repeat, so that where you come from, this is quite normal for spirit beings to enter others. And even though they're not related, certain spirits, they may also help to help a person who has been entered, so how they can get rid of that spirit, and they may sometimes benefit people, but there are others who use that belief in the spirits and they try to make a lot of money out of it. Honestly, everything that has a positive effect in certain ways, if they benefit people and make predictions that are beneficial, can be used in a very negative sense as well. That's not surprise. Look, the internet has so many advantages, and how many people use the internet to make a lot of money, right? To hack into people's computer and threaten them to expose it, and you give me money. This is just human nature. Anything really wonderful, like nuclear power, is very powerful. And how do people use it? You can use it to light up a whole city, but it has also the danger of building bombs from it. So there's no surprise. Religion can have a lot of beautiful effects, but people therefore can really help people to live a moral and happy life and prepare for the future in the right way. And then how many people use that really powerful positive potential in a negative way? And unfortunately nowadays people say religion is poison, because they look at only the negative aspect. This is true for anything. A very powerful, that's why human beings, they have such incredible potential to do good. But anything that has an amazing potential to do good can also go the other way. Something that has tiny potential to do good can do a tiny bit bad. That's just reality, right? Yes, but I want to stress that you see, like in Buddhism, they talk about other realms. And that's usually something when Buddhism is taught to the West or to people who received a modern education, right? In India, it's still much part of the culture, I believe, and there are some countries where it's still part of the culture. But Europe, I don't think it is, right? No believe in anything. Just believe in what you can see. And then, if there are beings of other realms, should we just shut up, not talk about it, because people don't like it? But then it's incomplete. The picture, like reality, there's another reality, and we can be reborn in those states. I think it's important to talk about it, but find ways that are convincing. I don't need to talk about it. I just need you to see the recording of this, or actually better even, to be there and see these children going into trances all around you. And they went back to normal afterwards, and it all happened simultaneously, right? So that's really convincing. If you've experienced it yourself, then you know. But no one else will believe you, so it doesn't really help. Okay, anyway, having said all this, sorry for going off that way, but in a way, it's all part of it. It's all part of this. That a bodhisattva, how do we get there? We were talking about bodhisattvas. Has compassion for all sentient beings, also for these spirit beings. They're very much part of it, and like His Holiness can communicate with them, no doubt about it, no question, through an oracle or through just perceiving them. So this is what happens when you progress on the path. More and more, your mind can perceive more and more. You start entering a level that is beyond ordinary people. And we can no longer perceive these highly advanced bodhisattvas. So then they manifest in a way as just ordinary. Remember I said that in the beginning, when you were a very high professor, very incredibly learned, when you talk to a little girl, little boy, you're not going to talk the way you ordinarily. You manifest in a way that they can relate to. That's what Buddhas and Bodhisattvas do. But the point is still, we need to get there first. And before we can enter this path and then progress further and further and further, culminating in enlightenment, okay, so closeness towards sentient beings, that means affectionate love, the sense of affection and love for sentient, or closeness, then that leads to great compassion, which is twofold really. Wishing for all sentient beings to be free from the 3 types of suffering and wishing to protect them from these. And then it's the altruistic resolve where you're determined to do so, and then it's bodhicitta. Then you enter the path. You enter the path because now you want to become a Buddha. That's really what it is. It's kind of you want to do it. It's everything. What we do is the wish to do so is so important. The wish to do so. Love is a wish for something. Compassion is a wish for something. So these are these emotions we're talking about, wishing to become a Buddha. And the power of the mind is such, first you wish for it, and if you then accumulate the causes and conditions, you will achieve it. That is the power of prayer. Prayer is really aspiring towards something. It's not the words, but it's wishing. May I become a better person? That's the first step. And then you accumulate the causes and conditions. The sky is the limit. But there's still limits. May I be able to remove the suffering of all sentient beings. Not going to happen. That wish is beneficial, but that's what you can't do. That's why I say, you know, like I know that in the modern world, perfectionism is a disease. Perfectionism is a disease in the sense that the self-centeredness is such. I blame self-centeredness for it. Self-centeredness drives us towards wanting to do it perfect. That means, in other words, without fault. What is the opposite of perfect? Without any fault. So I want to do it perfect. And many people are driven by that. This is not talking about a bodhisattva who's driven by giving his or her own best. That's different. No, but about this perfectionism. And not being satisfied until it's perfect. And stressing themselves out, stressing others out, and suffering from burnout sooner or later. I'm not saying everyone who suffers from a burnout is a perfectionist. But this perfectionism that is also suggested possible by advertisement. Be the perfect husband, be the perfect housewife, be the perfect girl or whatever, right? It's suggested that it's possible. And people strive towards it. You see it in your parents, you see it in your siblings and so forth and others, and you strive towards the same. And it's so exhausting. You bring into Buddhism, I want to be the perfect practitioner. So thinking if you meditate, you're not allowed to move. And then you're in so much pain. And then you don't want to do it again because there was so much pain. Right? So this rigidness, it's a rigid mind. Perfect, without fault, without limitation. First of all, that's impossible. And I say even the Buddha is not perfect. Depends on how you define perfect. But a Buddha, if they could, would take away the suffering of all sentient beings. They would, but they can't. So there is something they can't. Now you can say perfect from the perspective of no more faults left in the mind that can be eliminated. From that perspective, in relation to that, you can label perfect. But in relation to just in general, no more limit to do whatever you aspire, then the Buddha is not perfect. Because even the Buddha, before they became a Buddha, they did prayers knowing it was unrealistic. They made prayers, may I be able to liberate all sentient beings. That's not going to happen, right? Otherwise, only you would be needed. From now on, once you're a Buddha, you liberate all sentient beings. You don't need other Buddhas, because you're doing the job. It's not going to happen, because they must have a karmic connection to you. Unless they have a karmic connection, they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to find you inspiring or whatever and do what you instruct. No way. So you always need two hands to clap. So you need the Buddha and you need the person. Both sides. It's true for everything. That's dependent arising. That's dependence. Okay? If you want to kill someone, the person you want to kill must have the karma to be killed. But just having the karma to be killed doesn't mean you are killed, because you need a killer. right? So you always need both. You usually just see one side. When you die, there's death, there's also birth. Every moment is a death, there's a birth. So we think there's just one thing. Because we try to see things in such a concrete way, it doesn't give space for the whole picture. Things seem to exist in an isolated way. We focus on just one aspect and believe that that's all there is. One person to blame. Or death is just death. It's just the end of everything, like an absolute death. For us, everything exists in an absolute way, which means not in relation to other things, not in dependence on our mind, absolute. An absolute I and an absolute other, and an absolute less important, sorry. Right? So, do you see that? How this is the case? So, therefore, we need always two sides, and even a Buddha can only provide one side. A Buddha is not more powerful than the karma of living beings. It's not more powerful than the actions of sentient beings. It's not more powerful than the lack or the karmic, the lack or the absence of or the presence of a karmic connection. From the Buddha gives everything. They give everything they can. Everything. So it's like the sun that equally shines on everyone. But whether we step out of the shadow or not to receive the sun, that's up to us. Does that make sense? So perfectionism, for the sake of being perfect and being, right, that is such an obstacle. It's okay to have limitations. In fact, until you become a Buddha, you have so many. And to do it perfect is so unrealistic and is so hard on yourself. You're not doing yourself a favor. Be okay with the mistakes. Embrace those mistakes, and you're okay. Tibetans are very good at that. Tibetans are so laid back, they don't worry about their mistakes. They don't hide them. Or maybe they don't make them public, but they don't hide them. They don't deny them. I mean, they're not in denial about them in terms of their own mind, right? So that's why Tibetans are really good Dharma practitioners. They're so laid back, really laid back. Yeah. So that's the first thing to do. Before you start learning the Dharma, learn to be laid back. Relax. It's okay. The way you are, it's fine. You're good the way you are, but no, there's room for improvement. Right? Okay. All right, it's 10. It's time for tea. Oh, you had a question? Yeah.
After.
After.